Pyramids, eternal inspiration. Data, information, knowledge and wisdom pyramid. For eons, people have been impressed with existence and meaning of pyramids. They have been constructing them, admiring them, exploring and studying them, destroying them for all kind of reasons, and using them for various purposes. Thousands of pyramids have been found on almost every continent around the planet. Over 100 pyramids have been found in Egypt alone, and more than double that in Sudan, just south of Egypt. Over 1,000 are in Central America, being attributed to various civilizations. The total number of pyramids around the world is over 5,000. Physical impact that pyramids leave on every person that had a chance to visit them is tremendous. But that impression does not stop at our conscious mind. It also invades our subconscious spheres. It molds our abstract thinking, our way of expressing concepts and ideas, the way we understand and define the world around us. The impact is overwhelming and long-lasting. Researchers and practitioners often make reference to so-called DIKW pyramid model representing data, information, knowledge and wisdom. However, just like with real pyramids, there is very little agreement about this model and many of its aspects. There are even disagreements about the actual name. Is it a data pyramid, information or a knowledge pyramid? No one can absolutely determine when was the pyramid model used for representation of information for the first time, or who was its creator. There is also very little agreement about the meaning of the hierarchy, definitions of its specific layers, and even less in the description of the processes that transform elements lower in the hierarchy into those above them. For information scientists, the DIKW model illustrates a hierarchical relationship between data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. The knowledge pyramid starts with data and builds upon it in each follow-up step. Data is the product of observations or measurements, and is usually of no value until processed and turned into information by placing it in a meaningful context. Data is a set of discrete, objective facts about events. It describes only a part of what happened. It provides no judgment or interpretation, and no sustainable basis for any action. Data says nothing about its own importance or relevance. However, it becomes information as soon as it is given some meaning. As in this example, just by adding one extra column of data we can conclude that 146.71 is a metric value, and that 13,111 probably represents some square area given in acres. Still, although combined, those two sets of data do not represent some really meaningful information. We don't know if it is just some random data or there is some deeper meaning represented numerically. A number, a symbol, a character or a word is meaningless unless placed in some context. It is the context which gives data some meaning, and thus make it informative. Information is created through study, observation, aggregation, thinking, and by putting data in some relation or connection. It is worth mentioning that there is a group of information scientists known as minimalists. They believe that data is represented through symbols, so is the information but in more complex forms, such as words, sentences, statements, statistics, diagrams, charts or similar. So according to them the only difference between data and information is the complexity. If we develop our data table further, by adding just one extra column, and assume that the columns are related, we can conclude that we are most likely talking about some object with a height of 146.71 meters, width of 230.348 meters and so on. We can go even further with our assumptions and form a better idea of the concept hidden behind the data. We can deduce that it is some huge and high object that covers a very large base area. However, an extra step is still required. We need to enter the world of knowledge. This is done by correlating the information we already know, to parts of our personal knowledge base that contains information about specific objects of those proportions. By doing this, we come close to a realization that we are probably talking about a pyramid. A bit of extra research can confirm that the information presented relates to the Great Pyramid of Giza. An object also known as the Pyramid of Khufu, or the Pyramid of Cheops, the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the only one that remains largely intact. Knowledge is at a next level of the DIKW pyramid. It involves ability to understand and to make use of available data and information in order to make decisions, solve problems, offer solutions, and gain new insights. Human cognition is required to transform information into knowledge by adding value and meaning to it. In other words, information becomes knowledge through cognitive effort, creating a new place in our matrix of existing experience and knowledge, correlating it to things and concepts that have been already accepted by us. The outcome, a form of new knowledge, unlike data and information, is contextual, very personal, contains judgments, and involves individual values and beliefs. In other words, is hardly ever objective. It is our intimate and personal understanding of the world around us. We need to be aware that our knowledge is largely biased and limited in many aspects. Let's look at the Cheops pyramid example again. Looking at the data, which we can wrongly perceive as facts, we can conclude that it definitely has to be the tallest and the largest pyramid in the world. Well, our conclusion is only partially true. It is the tallest pyramid in the world, and it was the world's tallest structure for 3,800 years, but it is not the largest one. The Great Pyramid of Cholula, Piramidi Tepanapa, Mexico, has a volume almost twice that of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Looking at information about the size of the Cheops pyramid, we can assume that it was built with 100,000 blocks. In fact, the Great Pyramid of Giza is made of 2.3 million blocks of limestone that weighed between 2 and 50 tons each. Another bias and knowledge discrepancy can lead us to believe that Egypt has a greatest number and the oldest pyramids on the African continent. The fact is, as already mentioned, it is Sudan that has more than twice the number of pyramids found in Egypt, some of them 500 years older than the ones in Egypt. The top of the knowledge pyramid is reserved for the real jewel. The jewel of wisdom. Some authors believe that wisdom is a very difficult goal and hardly achievable. Wisdom is related to our acquisition and use of knowledge in a wise and responsible manner. It is the application of intelligence and our previous experience toward the attainment of a common good. Wisdom is the highest level of abstraction, with vision, foresight, and the ability to see beyond the horizon. Anyone can become knowledgeable about a subject by reading, researching, and memorizing facts. However, it is wisdom that requires more understanding and the ability to determine which facts are relevant in certain situations. Wisdom takes knowledge and applies it with discernment based on experience, evaluation, and lessons learned. One of the leading psychologists in this area, Paul Baltus, defines wisdom as expert knowledge in the fundamental pragmatics of life, that permits exceptional insight, judgment, and advice about complex and uncertain matters. That encompasses the following key components. 1. Rich procedural knowledge. 2. Rich factual knowledge. 3. An understanding of different life contexts. 4. An awareness of the relativism of values and priorities, and 5. The ability to recognize and manage uncertainty. Chinese philosopher Confucius talked about 3 methods by which we may gain wisdom. First, by reflection, which is noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest. Almost all great thinkers and philosophers, at some point in their lives, had something to say about knowledge and wisdom. Albert Einstein once said that any fool can know. The point is to understand. And he added, that wisdom is not a product of schooling but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. In words of Socrates, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Immanuel Kant contemplated that science is organized knowledge, while wisdom is organized life. And finally, knowledge is knowing what to say, wisdom is knowing when to say it. The DIKW model sees data as a prerequisite, a building block, of information as a prerequisite for knowledge, and consequently knowledge as a prerequisite for wisdom. Arguably, a lot of knowledge and substantial experience are required to reach the level of wisdom. Knowledge always comes first. Wisdom is built upon knowledge. That means that you can be both wise and knowledgeable, but you can't be wise without being knowledgeable. And just because you're knowledgeable doesn't mean you're wise. In order to show some wisdom, let's look at the DIKW model from a different, critical point of view. There are researchers who disagree with the widely accepted data information knowledge wisdom view and argue that the pyramid should be turned upside down. In other words, they believe that only through a process of decontextualization of knowledge, or reversed engineering, information and data emerge. They argue that as a prerequisite, we need to have an already built knowledge structure and information framework to comprehend available data. For them, data is created from information by putting information into a predefined data structure that defines its meaning. Another challenge to the DIKW pyramid model comes from the latest developments in computer science and information technology. In view of that, traditional hierarchy of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom needs to be carefully reconsidered, particularly taking into consideration the impact of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, digital transformation, and modern information and knowledge management. In conclusion, let's remember that information consists of data, but data is not necessarily information. Wisdom requires knowledge, but knowledge is not necessarily wisdom. Accumulated data is not information. Accumulated information is not necessarily knowledge, just like accumulated knowledge is not wisdom.